trying to talk about trade barriers with the way your author does. I told you that it was okay the way he did it, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense for the trade barriers one. So we'll start with trying to save the trade barrier shifter here. So we were talking about how the exchange rate appreciates or depreciates. So we've got a demand curve. He puts the supply curve as vertical. And then we've got the quantity of dollars. And then the exchange rate, big E, is dollars, foreign currency over per dollar. So that if it goes up or down, that's what shifts it. And so what I was trying to do last time, because especially for this problem, but it kind of applies to anything because we've been doing this before in class as well. Oh, let's see, Marco, I got to set this thing up for you, is to draw another graph, but this one showing the market for the other currency. So I guess I put euros up there. Okay. All right, there you go, Marco. Now you can see that a little better. Okay, so all I was trying to do was we measured dollars on the horizontal axis, but on we can measure euros here, for example, and so then the exchange rate for the foreign company, let's call it E star, would be dollars per, and actually a better way to, let me not put E star. Let's call this 1 over E, which is the inverse of what we have upstairs, is dollars per euro. So we saw online that sometimes they flip it around in terms of how they show the graphs, and you can go back and forth. And so with this particular example with trade barriers, I think it's actually easier to think about Europe here rather than the United States, because it doesn't, I'll tell the story that the author tries to tell, but I think it's a little weak for the trade barriers. So what number were we on last time for trade barriers? 4?
We just finished 4 or 5.
5. 5 was trade barriers?
You were starting 5.
5 was expected trade barriers.
Okay, so 5. I'm still on 5. So let's kind of, if you want to, I don't know if you want to restart 5, I'm going to kind of restart 5. So you can scribble out what you had, or what we had, I think, wasn't wrong the way we had it. It's just I didn't like where it was going with the explanation. So expected trade barriers. I guess I put TBE or something here. So with an increase in trade barriers, how does that look for foreigners buying our stuff? So, or selling, I guess it's kind of selling their stuff for that matter. So, expected trade barriers. What are Americans going to do? Are they going to buy more Toyotas or less? Less. All right. So an increase in trade barriers will cause Americans to buy less foreign goods. And American assets will rise in price. So in the United States, the trade barriers are going to cause American prices to rise along because the foreign ones are made artificially higher. So your textbook kind of takes this approach here of American assets will rise in price, and therefore the the foreigners will want to buy some American assets, and so it'll cause appreciation from E1 to E2. To me, that kind of leaves me hanging on, well, okay, I can see that a little bit in the longer term if the trade barriers stick around, it's fine. But if we think about it in terms of how much Americans are buying, how many euros do Americans want to buy now that they're buying less foreign goods? What's going to happen to the demand? It's going to be less, right? So to me, that one makes a little bit more sense that the euro, which is 1 over E, let me just put it here, is now going to be less. Inverse. So it's dollar appreciation or it is euro depreciation. The euro's going down and the dollar's going up. So Americans demand less foreign currency, causing foreign currency depreciation. Foreign currency depreciation is, of course, dollar appreciation. Or we can think of it as foreigners. The textbook explanation here is more of foreigners want more dollars to buy more American assets. Since domestic prices will rise. Yeah.
So with something like the Great Depression, for instance, would that cause those markets to depreciate?
With current, no, it's not possible. So one currency always, well, let me take that back. There can be appreciation and depreciation if we look at the whole basket of currencies, but everything has to balance out in the end. One country's appreciation is another's depreciation. So the dollar might be appreciating against 5 currencies, but depreciating against 4 other currencies. And then so, well, has the dollar overall appreciated or depreciated on the world market? I don't think we get into it in this textbook, but you can do a weighted average of the trade-weighted dollars. So let's say the 4 currencies combined together that depreciated only makes up 10% of the stuff that we engage in international trade on, and 90% is with the appreciating. Well, then obviously the dollar overall with the basket has appreciated relative to our trading partners. We don't care really that one small country in the South Pacific that we do 0.00001% of our trade with, that there was appreciation or depreciation. Their amount would be very small.
Well, like, what if every currency is going down like it did in the 30s? Like, German currency, like, straight up sank, and then the US dollar was going down.
Well, so what do you mean by going down, I guess,
Like,
first of all?
it was depreciating, wasn't it?
Against some currencies, but maybe not others. So it depends. So all of them can be, the reason I asked you about the going down part is, all of them can be going down in terms of inflation, right? In terms of purchasing power, like every government under the sun could be idiots printing off money and basically making the prices all double around the world. So that everything's kind of becoming worthless at the same time. But if one is, and that's kind of what this chapter is teaching us, is that it's all about one relative to another. So this country is doing inflation of 100%, but this country is only doing inflation of 50%. The 50% one is still the better place to put your money. So as stuff flows then from one currency to the other, we will have some exchange rate adjustments. And one country will be, and the one with the higher inflation will be depreciating faster.
So I was just actually asking about price level then. I wasn't, like, the question was like,
Yeah, I think so.
so it was more geared towards the price level that I didn't understand.
Yeah, yeah, so that there's a connection there that's in your notes from, I think it was shifter number 1, that the level of the exchange rate, that's probably, since you brought us this far, let's put that up there. So I'll just write it as an aside and then erase it here. But what was it? We had the exchange rate is equal to the real exchange rate times PL over PL. Which one's the foreign one?
To start.
The top one is, right? So that's the foreign price level. And so what this says is that this is the American exchange rate, right? That's E that we're measuring here, euros per dollar. What it says is that if in fact, we're going to do an exercise here, I don't know if we'll get to it today or not. If this goes up by 10%, this goes up by 10%, nothing happens, right? But if this goes up by 20%, and this goes up by 10%, then that's going to cause this thing to fall, and the currency is going to depreciate. So it's always one relative to the other. Okay, questions there? All right. So let's see, we got a couple more, I think, to do. Maybe just one, because I did imports and exports with you guys already, right? So number 6, this is the last one, I think. Expected productivity. Expected productivity. So, good question is, what the heck's productivity? This is something every economics major for sure. Principles, you learned it, but then you probably forgot it. But if you're these upper division classes, what is productivity? JC, I see your hand first. Say that one more time. I think you got it close. So if I was to do a formula, productivity is equal to what? Output minus input divided. Okay, so how productive are you, right? For 1 hour of labor, I can make 10 hamburgers. For 1 hour of labor, JC can do 12 hamburgers. Who's more productive, JC or me? JC, right? So it's number of units of output divided by number of units of input is how productive you are. So if there's an increase in productivity, an increase in expected productivity, so people become more productive. So in 1 hour, they used to be able to do 10 units. Next year, they can do 12 units. What does that mean for the overall picture here in the world? Brady. Yeah, but by normalizing it here, we're just kind of saying, because we could have numbers like 100 units here, 50. I could play around with the numbers and look at, basically it's the number. So when we get a number here, I was saying 10, it's 10 units of output, 10 hamburgers per hour, right? Per hour of work, let's just put hour. So I could have 10 hours of work and I can do 1,000 hamburgers, then we can figure out what the productivity is. So it's always 10 hamburgers per unit of labor hour. That's figured up here. So that would be an example of labor productivity, for instance. Yeah.
So if it goes up, neither your output's going up or input's going down?
Correct. So now what does that mean? In the big picture of things in life, how is that going to help the business? What can they do now that's different than before? Are they going to like that? Let's start with that. Does the business like you to be more productive?
Yes.
Why do they like you to be more productive? Money, right? So I can now maybe hire less of you, might be to make the same amount of output. I don't need as much labor, so I'm going to save money, and I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be more profitable. But am I going to be more profitable over the long haul if I start making more profit compared to other industries, other companies? Enter. What happens when you enter? Price goes down. So what naively looks like those greedy, profit-seeking businesses are making more money off the backs of the laborer, the laborer lost their job, right? That's the narrative that you might hear. You, as keen economic students, knowing that competition drives profits back to normal. If there's healthy competition that hasn't been corrupted by the government playing kissy face with big business, if there's entry and exit of firms and we have a dynamic industry where there's fierce competition among these businesses, then ultimately, who benefits? Consumers, producers, the government, or
everybody?
Well, kind of everybody in a sense, right? So, but especially the consumers are going to have lower prices. So productivity drives lower prices. Has that happened in real life in anything you use? Give me an example of something that's gone down in price dramatically during your lifetimes. TVs, right? How about this thing in our pocket? That's gone down substantially. Now you might say, oh, I bought my iPhone for $600 5 years ago, and now it's $1,000. But if we actually put apples and apples about how good the phone is, right, take a careful analysis of that, which isn't always easy to do, you're getting 10 times the phone for 10% higher price or whatever, something along those lines. So once we correct for some of that, we start to see that. So an increase in productivity, I think I'll bring you through the whole chain of logic we just did. I was going to shortcut it just to decrease in price. But increase in productivity leads to an increase in profits, which leads, this is like the extra micro analysis here, which leads to an increase in entry and a final decrease in price. So the textbook pretty much brings you from this point of reasoning to this. Like that's the part that we should get. When we're more productive, prices will come down in a market system. Okay, so a decrease in price then leads to what in terms of foreigners with our stuff? If Americans are more, and by the way, when we say productivity this way, we're saying Americans are more productive than foreigners, which by the case is, by the way, is true. So we are in general more productive, and when they measure productivity that way, it's a little misleading because we have the machines and everything along with. So it's not the mix. It's not picking on an individual, although you can pick on an average individual too. Average American's more educated or whatever, but you're always dealing with averages when you look at that. So, so in general, yes, it's true. Americans tend to be more productive in terms of the dollar value of their output versus the dollar value of their input. Are Americans paid more? Dollar value of their input? Yes, they're more skilled, more educated, blah, blah, blah. So we're paying them $30 an hour, but they're actually generating a whole bunch more dollars per hour in output relative to some of our counterparts in other countries. Okay, so an increase in productivity leads to a decrease in American prices. This is American prices. So what happens in the foreign exchange market to tie this all back? Appreciation or depreciation? Appreciation. So they're going to want to buy more dollar-based assets, causing the exchange rate to go up. So an increase in the price leads to an increase in demand, which leads to appreciation of the currency. So the dollar becomes more valuable. All right, questions there? So that walks you through all of the how currencies change. And then the last thing here, maybe I'll And the textbook goes through the long run changes, which is basically the same. I guess I'll do it just because the book has it, but it really mirrors the short run. They actually start you off with that. So long run, in fact, I am going to just flash it on the screen. I don't think we need to add it to your notes. You guys can summarize it. Okay, so it's similar. The textbook starts you off the way I did with purchasing power parity, and then it brings you into long run things that are going to affect the price level, or not the price level, the exchange rate. And so here's the chart that I decided just to give you. It's really the same list of things, so it's kind of just rehashing it really. So if the domestic price level goes up, so if American prices are higher, do people want to buy our stuff? No. So it's going to cause depreciation of the currency. Trade barriers we just did, so an increase in trade barriers causes appreciation of the currency. Import demand. So we want to buy more foreign stuff. It's the opposite of the first one. This one's kind of weird. So import demand. So we could think about our demand, if we go back to this picture, we want to buy more German automobiles. We want to buy more BMWs. So what's going to happen here?
Ours is going to go down. Theirs is going to go up.
Yeah, so this is the demand for euros. So we want to buy more BMWs. What happens, and don't follow what I did here, but well, we can pretend we're at D2 if you want, but what's going to happen if let's say we're at D2, I guess. So we're currently at this exchange rate, but now we want to buy more BMWs. Our import demand goes up, and so what happens to our demand for euros? To buy the BMWs, what do we need? We need more euros, right? So it's going to shift this way. So this is appreciating, which means the dollar is depreciating. So it's just the opposite. And I kind of think the import demand one isn't bad to look at the net export equation, which is what I guess I did that with you guys already. So maybe I won't rehash that. So export demand, foreigners want more of our stuff. They need dollars to do it, so that's going to increase the demand. And then we just did productivity. So just be prepared for that. The textbook kind of walks you through the short run, and then they basically said, oh, okay, well, now we do a supply and demand, and let me just regurgitate the same stuff with the short run. So I'm not really sure why he exactly takes that, but there's a picture of all the stuff we just did. Okay, let's do some problems. So let's see. If you want, you can move around chairs. I think it'd be good for you to peek at somebody, just your neighbor. We don't have to get into big groups for this. If you want to, just so you can kind of check your work. So we're going to do all of these. So we got 17, 18, 19, 20. So there you go, German sports car. Hey, we're right on the money here. So we got the BMW for the first problem. A German. So let's see. These are on Blackboard, Marco. They're one of the things from chapter 20. So if you pull it up, I'll put them on the screen too, but I don't know if you'll be able to see them very good.